الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. وصلنا إلى قول المؤلف رحمه الله: أو اكتحل بما يصل إلى حلقه. قال الشيخ رحمه الله، أي المؤلف ما زال يذكر مفسدات الصوم. قال الشيخ رحمه الله: قوله أو اكتحل بما يصل إلى حلقه، الكحل معروف، فإذا اكتحل بما يصل إلى الحلق فإنه يفطر، لأنه وصل إلى شيء مجوف في الإنسان وهو الحلق. هذا هو تعليل من قال إن الكحل يفطر، ولكن في هذا التعليل نظر، ولذلك ذهب شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله إلى أن الكحل لا يفطر ولو وصل طعم الكحل إلى الحلق. وقال، وهذا مذهب الحنفية والشافعية، أن الاكتحال لا يفطر، أن الاكتحال لا يفطر ولو وصل الطعم إلى الحلق. قال: وقال إن هذا لا يسمى أكلا وشربا ولا بمعنى الأكل والشرب، ولا يحصل به ما يحصل بالأكل والشرب، وليس عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديث صحيح صريح يدل على أن الكحل مفطر، والأصل عدم التفطير وسلامة العبادة حتى يثبت لدينا ما يفسدها، وما ذهب إليه رحمه الله هو الصحيح، أي ما ذهب إليه شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله، قال هو الصحيح، وهو مذهب كما قلنا الحنفية والشافعية. وهذا أيضا لأن منفذ العين منفذ دقيق جدا، منفذ ضعيف لا يكاد يصل إلى الحلق منه شيء، ليس كالذي يصل إلى الحلق عن طريق الأنف. وأيضا فإن الاكتحال كان معروفا في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، وكان الناس يستعملونه، ومع ذلك فإن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يقل للناس إن الاكتحال مفطر، ولو كان مفطرا لبينه للناس صلى الله عليه وسلم، فلم يثبت عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم في هذا شيء. وأما حديث ليتقه الصائم فهو حديث منكر. The author says, or Al-Hajjawi says, or uses kohl. You guys know what kohl is? The used for the eyes, like a kind of like an eyeliner that they used to use. He says, or uses kohl which reaches his throat, because sometimes you may put something in your eye and you find the taste in your throat. Does anyone use eye drops here? Do you ever taste it in your throat? طيب. So the author says, or uses kohl which reaches his throat. The Sheikh says, al-kohl is known, and so if he uses al-kohl and it reaches his throat, then he has broken his fast, because something has reached a body cavity, and the body cavity in this case is his throat. So this is the reasoning of the ones who say that using kohl, if it reaches the taste, you find the taste in your throat, it breaks your fast. What's their reasoning? Reached a body cavity. He says, and this reasoning is questionable, and this is why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, and it is also the madhab of Hanafiya and Shafi'iyya, they say that al-kuhl does not break your fast. It doesn't break your fast even if you taste it in your throat. And he said, he's referring to Ibn Taymiyyah, he said that because it's not called eating or drinking, and nor does it contain the meaning of eating and drinking. And you don't get out of it what you get out of eating and drinking. And there is no hadith, no sahih, explicit hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that shows that kohl breaks the fast. And the basis is that things don't break the fast, and the worship is sound until we have an evidence that indicates that it has been corrupted. The basis is that the worship is what? Correct and sound, until we have an evidence that says, no, now the worship has been corrupted. So the Shaykh says, and what the position he took is the correct position. That what? Kohl breaks the fast or doesn't break the fast? Doesn't break the fast. And that's the madhab of Hanafi and Shafi'iyya. And because the channel between the eye and the throat is very weak and it's very narrow. And it's not like the things that go through your nose and reach the throat. And also, the Prophet ﷺ, in his time, did the people use kohl? Yeah, people used to use al-kohl. They used to al-iktihal, men and women. And it was something which was widespread. And with that, the Messenger ﷺ didn't tell them this breaks the fast. It was widespread among the people. So if it was something that what breaks the fast, the Messenger ﷺ would have clarified it to the people. And there's no hadith, there's no sahih hadith in this regard, whether regarding kohl and fasting. As for the hadith which says, narrated that he said, and the fasting person should avoid it, referring to al-ithmid and the like, then it's a munkar hadith. So that's not an established hadith. قوله قال رحمه الله قوله أو أدخل إلى جوفه شيئا أو أدخل إلى جوفه شيئا من أي موضع كان. قوله إلى جوفه أي إلى مجوف في بدنه كحلقه وبطنه وصدره، والمراد أنه يفطر بذلك. وهذا قول المذاهب الأربعة، هذا تعليلهم، وهو أن إدخال الشيء إلى الجوف مفطر. واختلفوا في تحديد الجوف، ولكن المقصود أنهم عللوا بهذا. ونازعهم آخرون، ومنهم شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله، وقال إن هذا التعليل ليس عليه دليل، أي بمجرد ما يدخل الشيء إلى الجوف فإنه يفطر. وهذا هو الصحيح، وهو الذي ذهب إليه شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله، وهو أن إدخال الشيء إلى الجوف ليس بمفطر مطلقا. قال رحمه الله: والمراد أنه يفطر بذلك، فلو أن الإنسان أدخل منظارا إلى المعدة حتى وصل إليها فإنه يكون بذلك مفطرا. والصحيح أنه لا يفطر إلا أن يكون في هذا المنظار دهن أو نحوه يصل إلى المعدة بواسطة هذا المنظار، فإنه يكون بذلك مفطرا، ولا يجوز استعماله في الصوم الواجب إلا للضرورة. He says, who says? الحجاوي says there at the top, أو أدخل إلى جوفه شيئا من أي موضع كان, or introduces into his body cavity anything from any place. Or introduces into his body cavity anything from any place. So the Shaykh mentions that. He says, to his body cavity, into his body cavity, meaning the cavity of the body, such as the throat or stomach or chest, and the intent is that he breaks his fast. So they said, the majority of the people of knowledge, and this is the opinion of the four madhahib, they say that if anything is introduced into a body cavity, then it breaks the fast. They differ over what is considered a body cavity. So they may differ over the specifics of that, but they agree on the premise. Something is introduced into a body cavity, then it breaks the fast. Other ulama didn't agree with this reasoning. And they said that that's not the reason someone breaks their fast. It's just merely because something is introduced into the body cavity. And one of the most prominent ulama who defended that is Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. He said, no, there's no evidence that says just because something reaches a body cavity, it breaks the fast. And that is the correct position. So, going back, he says, explaining this, what the author said, and so if someone inserts a camera from his throat and into his stomach, as is common, right? Introduces a camera, and now the camera has reached his stomach, reached his throat, and so on, and it went down. According to that reasoning, does it break the fast or not? Breaks the fast. According to what they said, it breaks the fast. Why? Reach the body cavity. The Sheikh says, and what is correct is that he doesn't break his fast. He doesn't break. Why? Why did the Sheikh say the correct position is that he doesn't break his fast? It's because he doesn't agree with that premise that just because something reaches a body cavity, it breaks the fast. So now that requires proof in and of itself. So he says, correct is that it doesn't break the fast. Unless, he says, unless, for example, there's some coating on this camera, some lubricant, some coating, which goes down to the stomach through that camera going down, then you break the fast. Because now something has entered your stomach and settled in your stomach. Okay? And so he says, and it's not permissible to use it while fasting, in the obligatory fasting, unless there is a necessity to do so. قال رحمه الله ولو أن الإنسان كان له فتحة في بطنه وأدخل إلى بطنه شيئا عن طريق هذه الفتحة فعلى المذهب يفطر بذلك كما لو داوى الجائفة والجائفة هي الجرح الذي يبلغ إلى الجوف قال فعلى المذهب يفطر بذلك كما لو داوى الجائفة والصحيح أنه لا يفطر بذلك إلا أن تجعل هذه الفتحة بدلا عن الفم بحيث يدخل الطعام والشراب منها لانسداد المريء أو تقرحه ونحو ذلك فيكون ما أدخل منها مفطرا كما لو أدخل من الفم وهذا هو اختيار شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله. And so, if someone had an opening in their stomach, he said, and he inserts something into his stomach through that opening, according to what they said, and it is the madhab of the Hanabila, of course, that's why the author mentioned it, that it breaks the fast or doesn't break the fast? Breaks the fast. For example, and they give the example of treating al-ja'ifa. And al-ja'ifa is a wound which reaches a body cavity. A wound which reaches a body. For example, someone gets stabbed and it goes so deep that it reaches his stomach, for example. Reach the body cavity. So treating that, then there's going to, things are going to reach the stomach. Things may reach the stomach when treating them. And today we have the example of sending a camera down, even though that goes to the throat and not through an opening in the stomach, but it's the same premise. The Shaykh says, and what is correct is that he doesn't break his fast through that. Meaning if he had an opening in his stomach and something's inserted, unless it's made as a substitute for the stomach, such that they put food and drink through there because the esophagus is closed or ulcered or the like of. And so in that case, then the things that are inserted they break the fast, just like if they were taken through the mouth. And this is the choice of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. In conclusion, if that thing is sent to the stomach, in specific, the stomach, and it settles in the stomach, then it breaks the fast. Because you're sending down the camera, it doesn't settle in your stomach. But if you were to swallow a coin, for example, what happens? Settles, goes down, and it's outwardly, it's as if you're eating or drinking. Understood? قال رحمه الله قوله غير إحليله غير إحليله أي قناة الذكر فلو أدخل عن طريق الذكر خيطا فيه طعم دواء فإنه لا يفطر. لماذا استثنوا الداخل عن طريق الإحليل؟ لأنه لا ينفذ إلى الجوف. لأنه لا ينفذ إلى الجوف. قال فإنه لا يفطر لأن الذكر لا يصل إلى الجوف ما دخل عن طريقه فإن البول إنما يخرج رشحا. هكذا علل الفقهاء رحمهم الله ومرادهم بذلك أن البول يجتمع في المثانة عن طريق الرشح لأنه ليس لها إلا منفذ واحد. على كل حال قال والحمد لله نحن في غنى عن هذه التعليلات من الأصل إذا أخذنا بالقول الراجح وهو أن المفطر هو الأكل والشرب وما أدخل من طريق الإحليل فإنه لا يسمى أكلا ولا شربا. وعلى هذا فالقسطرة البولية لا تفطر وكذلك الداخل عن طريق فرج المرأة فإنه لا يفطر وكذلك المنظار اليوم الذي يدخل في فرج المرأة أو في ذكر الرجل فإن ذلك كله لا يفطر. قال وإذا كانت الحقنة وهي التي تدخل عن طريق الدبر لا تفطر على القول الراجح وقد ذكرنا التفصيل في هذا. قال فما دخل عن طريق الإحليل من باب أولى. نعم أما الحقنة فذكرنا ما يتعلق بها. He says غير إحليله except other than his urinary tract. Except his urinary tract. So he said, or introduces into his body cavity anything from any place except his urinary tract. And that is the tract of the male private part. So for example, if someone were to insert something from that way, then they said it doesn't break the fast. The madhab, including the madhab here, Hanabila, they said it doesn't break the fast. Why doesn't it break the fast in this case? Why did you say everything that goes into a body cavity breaks the fast except if it goes through the urinary tract? Ahsan. They said that the things that go through the urinary tract don't reach a body cavity. It doesn't reach a body cavity. So that was their reasoning. على كل حال, the Shaykh says, and alhamdulillah, we are not in need of these types of reasoning from the beginning. Because if we take the correct position, and that is that the things that break your fast are eating and drinking, and the things that are like that, then something which is inserted into the urinary tract is not called eating or drinking. It's not called eating or drinking. And so according to that, and it's interesting how the fuqaha used to talk about these things. Even though perhaps it could have been very rare at that time, but look how common it is now. Today you have the catheters, which are inserted through the urinary tract up to the bladder in order to help expel urine. That's common now. So these rulings that the fuqaha talk about, you may think that, when are you going to need that? But you never know what happens in the future. This helps you. It builds a foundation to later, perhaps you can compare things that didn't exist or things that become more common to those things that you learned about. Ala kulli hal, so inserting something into the urinary tract breaks the fast or not? Doesn't break the fast. It doesn't break the fast. And as we said, thus people who use the catheters the urinary catheters in order to expel urine from their bladder, doesn't break the fast. Similarly, the things which go from the part of a woman as well, it doesn't break the fast. For example, a woman may need, what do they call it? When they use a camera they insert a camera into the woman for certain medical reasons, and thus then that doesn't break the fast. In fact, it's done with men as well, where they insert a camera into the part of a man for whatever reason, and thus that then doesn't break the fast. It doesn't break the fast, or whatever else is inserted by that way. قال المؤلف رحمه الله أو استقاء قوله أو استقاء أي استدعى القيء، ولكن لا بد من القيء، فلو استدعى القيء ولكنه لم يقئ فإن صومه لا يفسد، بل لا يفسد إلا إذا استقاء فقاء، ولا فرق بين أن يكون القيء قليلا أو كثيرا. أما ما خرج بالتعتعة من الحلق فإنه لا يفطر، فلا يفطر إلا ما خرج من المعدة سواء كان قليلا أو كثيرا، لحديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من استقاء عمدا فليقضي، ومن ذرعه القيء فلا قضاء عليه. ذرعه أي غلبه، ذرعه أي غلبه. He says, now another thing that breaks the fast, أو استقاء, or he induces vomiting, or induces vomiting. You make yourself throw up. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, however, it's a must that you vomit, that you actually throw up. So if he induces it and tries to vomit, but doesn't vomit, then his fasting is not corrupted. His fasting is correct and his fasting is not corrupted. It's only corrupted if he tries to throw up and he induces it and he does throw up. And there's no difference, he says, between whether that vomit is a lot or a little. Regardless of the amount he throws up, it breaks the fast. As for that which comes out due to gagging and it comes from the throat, then that doesn't break the fast. What breaks the fast is what comes from the stomach. What comes from the stomach. Whether it's a small amount or a large amount, due to the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever induces vomiting intentionally shall make it up. And whoever throws up, is overwhelmed by it, then he does not have to make it up. Then he does not have to make it up. So you make it up if you do it intentionally. But if you happen to throw up and you're overwhelmed, you're overcome by it, then you don't have to make it up, and your fasting is correct. قال رحمه الله: واستدعاء القيء له طرق: النظر، الشم، العصر، والجذب، وربما نقول السمع أيضا. أما النظر فكأن ينظر الإنسان إلى شيء كريه فتتقزز نفسه ثم يقيء. وأما الشم فكأن يشم رائحة كريهة فيقيء. وأما العصر فكأن يعصر بطنه عصرا شديدا إلى فوق ثم يقيء. وأما الجذب بأن يدخل أصبعه في فمه حتى يصل إلى أقصى حلقه ثم يقيء. أما السمع فربما يسمع شيئا كريها. He says, and inducing vomiting has different ways. You can induce it in a number of ways. By looking at something, and by smelling something, by squeezing, by bringing it out, and we may also say by listening as well. Sheikh's words. As for looking, he says, so a person may look at something which is foul and become disgusted and throw up. So if he does that on purpose, then he has induced vomiting. And if he does it unintentionally, then his fasting is correct. Similarly with smell, he says, as for smelling, you may smell a foul smell and throw up. As for squeezing, someone may squeeze their stomach forcefully until they throw up. Or bringing it out by putting your fingers until it reaches your throat and force yourself to throw up. And as for listening, then you may hear something, and it may hear something unpleasant. قال رحمه الله: وقال بعض العلماء إنه لا فطر في القيء ولو تعمده بناء على قاعدة قعدوها، وهي الفطر مما دخل لا مما خرج، والوضوء مما خرج لا مما دخل. وضعفوا حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه، وقالوا إنه مخالف للقياس مع ضعف سنده. والجواب أن يقال: أين الدليل على هذه القاعدة؟ فهذا لحم الإبل ينقض وهو داخل. فسيقولون: لا ينقض الوضوء أي لحم الإبل إلا على مذهب الإمام أحمد، فقاعدتنا سليمة. قلنا لهم: إنزال المني من الصائم خارج ويفسد الصوم، وعلى هذا تنتقض قاعدتهم، لأن المني خارج، وقالوا الفطر مما دخل لا مما خرج. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, and some of the ulama said that you don't break your fast by vomiting even if it's intentional. You don't what? By vomiting, even if you do it intentionally, and that's a minority of the ulama. A small group of ulama said that even if you intentionally do it, then it doesn't break your fast. He said, and this is based on a principle a foundation that they made. They said, al-fitr is from that which enters, not from that which exits. And they said, al-wudu is from that which exits and not from that which enters. The point, okay, so then what did they do with the hadith of Abu Hurairah, which said what? If you induce the vomiting, you do it intentionally, then you have to make it up. And whoever's overcome by it doesn't make it up. They weakened that hadith. And they also said it opposes al-qiyas. The chain is weak and it opposes al-qiyas. And the answer, the Shaykh says, the answer is that where's the evidence for this foundation, this principle? Which principle? Fitr is from that which enters, not from that which exits. And wudu is the opposite. He said, where's the evidence for this principle? He said, camel meat, does it break the wudu? Breaks the wudu, and it's something which enters, not something which exits. He said, they'll say, yeah, but that's only according to the madhab of Imam Ahmad. Because the Hanabila are the only ones who say what? Camel meat breaks the wudu. He said, that's only according to Ahmad, so our foundation is still intact. The principle we have is still intact. We don't say camel meat breaks the wudu. He said, we'll say to them, well then, ejaculation from the fasting person is something which exits and it breaks the fast. Then the discharge is something which exits from the body and that breaks the fast. قال رحمه الله والصواب أن القيء عمدا مفطر حتى حكى بعض العلماء الإجماع على هذا. بعض العلماء حكى الإجماع على هذا، على أن القيء عمدا مفطر. قال لأن الحديث دل عليه والقاعدة التي أسسوها غير صحيحة، والحكمة تقتضي أن يكون مفطرا لأن الإنسان إذا استقاء ضعف واحتاج إلى أكل وشرب، فنقول له لا يحل لك في الصوم الواجب سواء رمضان أو غيره أن تتقيأ إلا للضرورة، فإن اضطررت إلى القيء فتقيأ ثم أعد على بدنك ما يحصل به القوة من الأكل والشرب. فهذا القول كما هو مقتضى الحديث، حديث أبي هريرة، كما هو مقتضى الحديث فهو مقتضى النظر الصحيح. أما رأيهم فهو يعارض النص وهو الحديث، وأما رأيهم فهو يعارض النص، والرأي المقابل للنص المعارض له فاسد لا عبرة به، ونقول لصاحبه أأنت أعلم أم الله؟ فما دام هذا حكم الله فإنه خير من الرأي. He says, and the correct position is that throwing up intentionally breaks the fast. Breaks the fast. To the point that some of the scholars said they claim that it's a consensus. To the point that some of the scholars claim that this is a ijma', that doing it intentionally breaks the fast. The Shaykh says, and so the correct position is that throwing up intentionally breaks the fast. Because is something which breaks the fast, because the hadith shows it, and the principle that they laid, the foundation that they laid is incorrect, and wisdom dictates it. Wisdom dictates that throwing up is something which breaks the fast. Because if someone throws up, then he becomes weak, and he is in need of eating and drinking. Right? When you're constantly vomiting, what do they tell you to do? Drink a lot of fluids. Make sure you drink fluids. He says, because someone, if they throw up, they become weak, they become physically weak, and they are in need of eating and drinking. And we say that it's not permissible in obligatory fasting, whether it's Ramadan or other than Ramadan, to intentionally break the fast. To intentionally break the fast. But what about voluntary fasting? Can you break the fast? Who said? Why? Sahih. You guys remember that? Because we said if someone starts a voluntary fast, are they obligated to finish it? No. So if someone throws up intentionally in a voluntary fast, that's something different. That's why he said it's not allowed unless it's for necessity. He said, and so if it becomes a necessity and you have to induce vomit, then throw up and then you can regain your strength through eating and drinking. And so he says this opinion then is what the hadith indicates, and it's also what correct reasoning indicates. As for their opinion, then it goes against the text. What is the text in this case? Hadith of Abu Hurairah. Hadith of Abu Hurairah. He says their opinion in this case goes against the text, and if an opinion goes against the text, then it's disregarded. It's disregarded, and we say to the person, are you more knowledgeable than or Allah? Are you more knowledgeable or Allah? And so long as this is the ruling of Allah, then it is better than opinions. قوله أو استمنى قال أو استمنى أي طلب خروج المني بأي وسيلة سواء بيده أو بالتدلك على الأرض أو ما أشبه ذلك حتى أنزل فإن صومه يفسد بذلك وهذا ما عليه الأئمة الأربعة رحمهم الله مالك والشافعي وأبو حنيفة وأحمد. He says at the top there, أو استمنى, or masturbates. Meaning, this is also something which invalidates the fast. He's mentioning things which invalidate the fast. He says, or masturbates. The Shaykh says, meaning he seeks to expel semen in any way, whether it's with his hand or by rubbing against something or similar things, until he ejaculates, then his fasting is corrupted by that. And this is what the four madhahib are upon. The four imams are upon this: Malik, Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, and Ahmad. So the four madhahib are in agreement that al-istimna corrupts what? Corrupts the fast. قال رحمه الله وأبى الظاهرية ذلك وقالوا لا فطر بالاستمناء ولو أمنى لعدم الدليل من القرآن والسنة على أنه يفطر بذلك فإن أصول المفطرات ثلاثة. ما هي ثلاثة؟ أكل والشرب والجماع. قالوا فإن أصول المفطرات ثلاثة وليس هذا منها فيحتاج إلى دليل ولا يمكن أن نفسد عبادة عباد الله إلا بدليل من الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Now the Zahiriyya and those who agreed with them, again a minority, he said that Zahiriyya refused this, and they said that al-istimna doesn't break the fast even if he ejaculates. Even if al-mani comes out, then his fast isn't broken. Because there's no evidence from the Quran and Sunnah that he breaks his fast through that. Because, this is what they're saying, because the things that break the fast go back to three things: eating, drinking, intercourse. And this isn't any of those three, and so it needs an evidence. And so we cannot corrupt the worship of the slaves of Allah unless we have an evidence from Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How do we respond to that? قال الشيخ ولكن عندي والله أعلم أنه يمكن أن يستدل على أنه مفطر من وجهين. الوجه الأول النص، فإنه في الحديث الصحيح أن الله سبحانه وتعالى قال في الصائم يدع طعامه وشرابه وشهوته. يدع طعامه وشرابه وشهوته من أجله. والاستمناء شهوة وخروج المني شهوة. والدليل على أن المني يطلق عليه اسم شهوة قول الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم وفي بضع أحدكم صدقة. قالوا يا رسول الله أيأتي أحدنا شهوته ويكون له أجر؟ قال أرأيتم لو وضعها في الحرام أكان عليه وزر؟ كذلك إذا وضعها في الحلال كان له أجر. والذي يوضع هو al-mani. The Shaykh says, however, I have, wallahu a'lam, meaning to me, you can use a text that this breaks the fast. There is a text that this breaks the fast. And he says, actually, we can use evidence in two ways. The first is text and the second is qiyas. As for the text, then in the hadith, correct hadith al-sahih, and actually it's in Bukhari and Muslim, so it's in the highest levels of authenticity. Allah said, as is in the hadith al-Qudusi, about the fasting person, he leaves off his food and drink and shahwa, and his desire for my sake. And istimna is a desire. And semen leaving the body is desire. It's considered shahwa. In fact, he says, and the proof that semen is called shahwa is the statement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he said, and in the intercourse of one of you there is sadaqah. There is sadaqah. They said, Ya Rasulullah, does any one of us fulfill his desire and he gets rewarded? Meaning he's rewarded for fulfilling his desire? He said, do you see, if he had placed it in al-haram, if he had placed his shahwa, his desire in al-haram, would he be sinful? He said, and similarly, if he places it in halal, then he is rewarded. He is rewarded. And so then, it's called shahwa. It's called shahwa. That discharge from the body is a shahwa. And Allah said in the Hadith al-Qudusi, He leaves off His food and drink and shahwa, His desires for my sake. And this Hadith shows that these permissible things, because these things are permissible in basis, one's relations with his wife, these permissible things become a source of reward if the intention is correct. If the intention is correct. So if he's intending to stay away from haram and stay with the halal, then he is rewarded. Is rewarded because through those intentions. So permissible things become a source of reward through their intentions. قال رحمه الله الوجه الثاني القياس فنقول جاءت السنة بفطر الصائم بالاستقاء إذا قاء وبفطر المحتجم إذا احتجم وخرج منه الدم وكلا هذين يضعفان البدن. أما خروج الطعام فواضح أنه يضعف البدن لأن المعدة تبقى خالية فيجوع الإنسان ويعطش سريعا. وأما خروج الدم فظاهر أيضا أنه يضعف البدن. ولهذا ينصح من احتجم أو تبرع لأحد بدم من جسمه أن يبادر بالأكل السريع الهضم والسريع التفرغ في البدن حتى يعوض ما نقص من الدم. وخروج المني يحصل به ذلك فيفتر البدن بلا شك. ولهذا أمر بالاغتسال ليعود النشاط إلى البدن فيكون هذا قياسا على الحجامة والقيء. وعلى هذا نقول إن المني إذا خرج بشهوة فهو مفطر للدليل والقياس. أن المني إذا خرج بشهوة فهو مفطر للدليل والقياس. ويستثنى مما قاله الشيخ رحمه الله إلا إذا احتلم. فإذا احتلم الرجل أو المرأة كذلك فإنه لا يفطر بالإجماع إذا احتلم. The second aspect, or the second way, the first way was what? To show that al-istimna breaks the fast. The first was the text. The second, he's saying qiyas. He says, we can say the sunnah has came and showed that a person breaks their fast by vomiting. And by hijama. And by hijama. And hijama we're going to talk about next lesson. There's the differing about that. We'll talk about it. So the sunnah shows that someone breaks the fast through vomiting and through hijama, he says, and both these things weaken the body. As for food leaving the body, then it's clear it weakens the body because the stomach now is empty of food and drink. And so a person gets hungry and thirsty easily. As for blood, then that's also clear as well that it weakens the body. And that's why they advise someone who does hijama, or for example someone who donates blood, that they eat something which is easily digested, drink plenty of fluids, and so on. Why? To make up for that lost blood. To make up for that lost blood. The point, he's saying that al-mani, semen, being expelled from the body, also weakens the body. So now we can compare it to vomiting and hijama. He says, and that's why someone is ordered to do ghusl after intercourse in order for that energy to come back, because it weakens the body. And so this is a qiyas with a qiyas against hijama and vomiting. And so he says, according to this, we say that if semen leaves the body bishahwa, with a desire, and that's the only way it leaves, then it breaks the fast due to the text and qiyas. It breaks the fast due to text and qiyas. There is one instance which is excluded from this, which excluded from the words of the Shaykh, and that is if someone has a wet dream. Someone has a wet dream. Does it break the fast? What's the proof? Ijma'. There's a consensus that the wet dream does not break the fast. Man or woman does not break the fast. That's by ijma'. قال الحجاوي رحمه الله أو باشر فأمنى قوله أو باشر فأمنى أي باشر زوجته سواء باشرها باليد أو بالوجه بتقبيل أو بالفرج فإنه إذا أنزل أفطر إذا لم ينزل فإنه إذا أنزل أفطر. قال وإذا لم ينزل فلا فطر بذلك. ونقول في الإنزال بالمباشرة ما قلنا في الإنزال بالاستمناء إنه مفطر. نعم. وهذا باتفاق المذاهب الفقهية الأربعة. هذا باتفاق المذاهب الفقهية الأربعة، وهو أن من باشر فأمنى فقد فسد صومه، وقد حكى بعض أهل العلم الإجماع عليه. قال وعلم من كلام المؤلف أنه لو استمنى بدون إنزال فإنه لا فطر، وأنه لو باشر بدون إنزال فإنه لا فطر في ذلك أيضا، وسيأتي بيان حكم المباشرة. نعم. فلا يتوهم أحد أن الفقهاء إذا قال سيأتي بيان حكم المباشرة، فلا يتوهم أحد أن الفقهاء إذا قالوا هذا لا يفطر أنه مباح، الكلام عن أصل الفعل ليس مقصودا هنا، ولكنه إنما يريد رحمه الله والفقهاء إنما يريدون بهذا أن يبينوا حكم الصوم بسبب هذا الفعل، ما يترتب على هذا الفعل من فساد الصوم أو صحته، ولا يتعرضون هنا لبيان حكم أصل الفعل. فانتبهوا لهذا جزاكم الله خيرا. He says, Al-Hajawi says at the top, أو باشر فأمنى, or he gets intimate and ejaculates. Or he gets intimate and ejaculates. That it what? Corrupts the fast. He says, meaning, he gets intimate with his wife, whether it's through touching or kissing or whatever way, as long as it's without intercourse. As long as it's without intercourse. Because that's something else. If it's with intercourse, it still breaks the fast, but there's different rulings related to it. أو بالفرج فإنه إذا أنزل أفطر وإذا لم ينزل فلا فطر بذلك. So if he ejaculates, the fast is broken, and if he doesn't ejaculate, then he doesn't break the fast. Okay? And what we say here regarding someone getting intimate with their wife, whatever way it may be, they get intimate, but the point is that he's doing actions. He's doing something with her. And so what we mentioned regarding al-istimna, then we mention it also here. So this, when someone gets intimate with his wife and ejaculates, then it corrupts the fast. And this isn't referring to intercourse. Then it corrupts the fast by agreement of the four madahib. And some of the ulama mention an ijma'. Ijma' what? If he gets intimate with his wife and discharges, then his fast is broken according to the four madahib, and some mention ijma'. But if it's intercourse, then it breaks the fast by ijma'. Intercourse is by ijma'. He says, and we understand from the words of the author that if he masturbates and doesn't ejaculate, or gets intimate and doesn't ejaculate, then his fast is not broken. His fast is not broken. He says, and we're going to talk about the ruling on getting intimate with one's wife while fasting. So pay attention here. When the fuqaha here, if they're saying something doesn't break the fast, they're not saying it's permissible. Okay? They're talking about a specific issue, and that is, does this break the fast or not? They're not talking about what's the ruling of the action. They're not talking about the ruling of the action. So, don't get confused. Don't get confused. Here, they're just talking about the action as it relates to breaking the fast or not. What is the ruling on the action in the first place? That's a different issue. قال رحمه الله قوله أو أمذى أي قال الشيخ رحمه الله أي فإنه يفطر والمذي هو ماء رقيق يحصل عقيب الشهوة بدون أن يحس به الإنسان عند خروجه وهو بين البول والمني من حيث النجاسة فالمني طاهر موجب لغسل جميع البدن والبول نجس موجب لغسل ما أصاب من البدن والملابس فكأن الشيخ رحمه الله يقول نجاسته مخففة والمذي يوجب غسل الذكر والأنثيين والمذي يوجب غسل الذكر والأنثيين ولا يوجب الغسل إذا أصاب الملابس بل يكفي فيه النضح كما ثبت عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ذلك. He says أو أمذى meaning it what? Or amda breaks the fast. And al-madhi, meaning he secretes al-madhi. Meaning, amda, meaning he secretes what? Al-madhi. Al-madhi. What is al-madhi? It's a thin, it's a a thin fluid which is secreted when one is aroused. It's a thin fluid which is secreted when one is aroused. And usually a person doesn't feel it when it leaves the body. And it's usually a very small amount. It's usually a very small amount, and it's not like al-mani. It's very different from al-mani. And it leaves, usually you don't feel it. He says, and it's between urine and mani. Mani is what? Semen. And it is between urine and mani as it relates to an-najasa. And so mani is tahir, and it necessitates that you wash the whole body. As for al-bawl, urine, then it is najis, and it necessitates that you wash whatever it touches from your body or the clothes. As for al-madhi, then it necessitates that you wash the male part and the testes, but it doesn't necessitate that you wash the clothes that it touches. But you have to cover it with water, as this has been established from the Prophet ﷺ. What's the difference between an-nadh and ghasl? When they say madhi, well, you have to do an-nadh. But if it's urine that touches your clothes, you have to do al-ghasl. What's the difference between the two? No. Beware of the sprinkle issue. Everybody says sprinkle. Nadh is not sprinkle. When they say the boy urine sprinkle like this. No. An-nadh is to cover the area with water. Al-ghasl is to wash it with water. Well, what's the difference? Al-ghasl, the water has to go to the place and separate from it. Whereas an-nadh, the water doesn't have to drip from it. Okay? So if you had a najasa right here, which is najasa mukhaffafa, such as baby boy urine, then if you take water and cover it, that's nadh. But if it's urine, then you have to wash it, meaning water comes and it separates from the place of najasa. Do we understand the difference between nadh and ghasl? So, as it relates to madhi, then you just do a nadh. You cover the area that it has touched on the clothes with water. Does it break al-wudu? Yes, al-madhi breaks al-wudu. When madhi comes out, then it breaks al-wudu. So the point is that they said, going back to the point, they said that if madhi comes out, it breaks the fast. It breaks your fasting. The Shaykh says, قال الشيخ رحمه الله فالمذهب أن خروج المذي مفسد للصوم كالمني أي إذا استمنى فأمذى أو باشر فأمذى فإنه يفسد صومه والذين يقولون لا يفسد بالمني يقولون لا يفسد بالمذي من باب أولى والذين يقولون إن الصوم يفسد بالمني اختلفوا في المذي على قولين فالمذهب أنه يفطر ولا دليل له صحيح والصحيح القول الثاني أنه لا يفطر والصحيح القول الثاني أنه لا يفطر أي لا يفطر مطلقا سواء باشر أو كرر النظر أو فكر فأمذى فإنه لا يفطر قال رحمه الله لأن المذي دون المني أي ليس كالمني لا بالنسبة للشهوة ولا بالنسبة لانحلال البدن ولا بالنسبة للأحكام الشرعية حيث يخالفه في كثير منها بل في أكثرها أو كلها فلا يمكن أن يلحق به وهذا اختيار شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله والحجة فيه عدم الحجة أي عدم الحجة على إفساد الصوم به لأن هذا الصوم عبادة شرع فيها الإنسان على وجه شرعي فلا يمكن أن نفسد هذه العبادة إلا بدليل. So the madhab is what? Regarding madhi being secreted, breaks the fast. They said, breaks the fast. And so it is like al-mani. Same thing. So if he is intimate and madhi is secreted, then the fast is broken. Fasting is broken. And those who say that it's not broken by al-mani will obviously say it's not broken by al-madhi. And those who say that it is broken by discharging al-mani, they differed regarding al-madhi. Okay, so in summary, the ulama differed regarding madhi being secreted, which is what we're talking about. Does it break the fast or not? The Hanabila said what? They said it breaks the fast. The Sheikh says, and there's no evidence for this. There's no evidence that what? It breaks the fast. That al-madhi breaks the fast. And the correct opinion, he says, is the second, and that is that it does not break the fast. So madhi coming out does not break the fast in any case. Whether he's intimate, or he sees something, or he's thinking, or whatever way, it doesn't break the fast. That's what? Madhi. He says, because al-madhi isn't like al-mani, as it relates to a shahwa. Are they the same as it relates to a shahwa? No, mani comes out with a shahwa. Madhi comes out without a shahwa. Meaning, when it happens, it's not accompanied with a shahwa. A lot of times it may come out and you don't even realize it. And also as it relates to as it relates to weakening the body, they're different. He says, and as it relates to the rulings regarding it, it differs in much of it, or most of it, or all of it. They're different, so we can't consider them the same. We can't consider them the same. He says, and this is the opinion of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and the proof was the proof that madhi doesn't break the fast. The proof is the lack of proof. Now, the proof is that there's no proof. And so this is a fasting which someone has initiated in a correct way, and so we can't say your fasting has been corrupted unless we have a dalil. قوله رحمه الله أو كرر النظر فأنزل أو كرر النظر فأنزل. The Hajawi says there at the top, or looks repeatedly and ejaculates. Or looks repeatedly and ejaculates. قال رحمه الله قوله أو كرر النظر فأنزل يعني فإنه يفسد صومه وتكرار النظر يحصل بمرتين فإن نظر نظرة واحدة فأنزل لم يفسد صومه لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لك الأولى وليست لك الثانية لا تتبع النظرة فإن لك الأولى وليست لك الثانية ولأن الإنسان لا يملك أن يجتنب هذا الشيء فإن بعض الناس يكون سريع الإنزال وقوي الشهوة إذا نظر إلى امرأته أنزل ولو قلنا إنه يفطر بذلك لكان فيه مشقة فصار النظر فيه تفصيل إن كرره حتى أنزل فسد صومه وهذا مذهب المالكية والحنابلة إن كرر النظر حتى أنزل فسد صومه وهو مذهب مالكية والحنابلة وإن أنزل بنظرة واحدة لم يفسد إلا أن يستمر حتى ينزل فيفسد صومه لأن الاستمرار كالتكرار بل قد يكون أقوى منه في استجلاب الشهوة والإنزال. نعم هؤلاء قالوا من كرر النظر فأنزل فإنه يفسد صومه وهو مذهب مالكية والحنابلة قالوا لأنه استدعاء فأشبه الاستمناء وقالوا إنه يمكن التحرز منه، يمكن التحرز منه بصرف النظر. فإذا الحنفية والشافعية، وهو القول الثاني، قالوا من كرر النظر حتى أنزل فإن صومه لم يفسد. هذا مذهب الحنفية والشافعية. طيب, he says, and the one who looks repeatedly and ejaculates, meaning his fasting is invalid, meaning his fasting is corrupted. He says, and looking repeatedly, when we say look repeatedly, how many times is repeatedly then? More than once. If you look more than once. So it's understood from that if he looks once and that happens, then his fasting is looks once, still intact. Then the fasting is still intact. Due to the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, do not follow up one look by another look, because you get the first, but you don't get the second. Okay? Meaning your eyes may fall on something, but don't look again. Understood? And so, he said, the Sheikh said, and because a person can't control this, you can't control looking once, it just happens, right? But looking more than once, you can control. You can control. That's why they differentiated between the two. He says, and because some people, they have a strong shahwa, they have strong desire, and perhaps that could happen, even though al-madhi is more common. Al-madhi is more common. Can it happen with al-mani just by looking? It can happen. It can happen for some people. Yeah, it may be rare, but it can happen. And so if we tell him then, you break your fast by just looking once, then it's very difficult. If you break your fast and discharges just because of looking once, then it becomes very difficult because you can't control. Or we tell him, just when you're at home, be blindfolded, and when you go in the kitchen, close your eyes, and that's it. على كل حال. So as it relates to looking, then there's some differentiation. If he continuously looks and that happens, then his fasting has been broken. And this is the madhab of al-Malikiyya and Hanabila. This is what they said. They said, if you continue to look until you discharge, then the fast has been corrupted. Why is it? What's their argument, their reasoning? Because they said it resembles al-istimna. And it also, they said, it could be avoided by looking away. So it's something which is voluntary. Something which is voluntary. Others said that if you look repeatedly and that happens, even if you're looking on purpose, then it doesn't break the fast. It doesn't break the fast. And that is the madhab of al-Hanafiyya and al-Shafi'iyya. And there are some salaf who said the first position, and there are some salaf who said the second position. He says, also, if someone looks continuously until they corrupt their fasting, does that count as just looking once? Yeah, someone is staring and saying, no, that's still my first look. Can they do that? No, because being persistent is like doing it repeatedly. It gets the same ruling. If you're staring, then it takes the same ruling. قال رحمه الله وأما التفكير بأن فكر حتى أنزل فلا يفسد صومه لعموم قول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله تجاوز عن أمتي ما حدثت به أنفسها ما لم تعمل أو تتكلم إلا إن حصل معه عمل يحصل به الإنزال كعبث بذكره ونحوه. As for thinking until one ejaculates, just thinking, does that break the fast or not? Then that does not break the fast. Due to the statement of the Messenger ﷺ, indeed Allah has overlooked for my ummah the thoughts that they have within themselves, so long as they do not act or speak. He has overlooked those thoughts within oneself, so long as they do not carry it out, as long as you don't act or speak on it. So if it's just thinking, then it doesn't break the fast. But if it's accompanied with something else, then that breaks the fast. طيب, in summary, قال الخلاصة: أولا المباشرة إذا أنزل فيها فسد صومه، وكذلك إذا أمذى على المذهب، وقلنا الصحيح أنه إذا أمذى فإنه لا يفطر. ثانيا النظر، إن كان واحدة فأنزل أو أمذى فلا شيء عليه في ذلك، وإن كرر فأمذى فلا شيء في ذلك، وإن كرر فأنزل فسد صومه. وهنا فرق المؤلف رحمه الله بين الإمذاء والإمناء، فإذا كرر النظر فأمذى فلا يفسد صومه، وإذا كرره فأمنى فسد صومه. والصواب أنه لا فرق بينهما في هذه الحال الثانية وغيرها، وأنه لا يفسد صومه بالإمذاء مطلقا سواء كان بالمباشرة أو بنظر. ثالثا التفكير لا يفسد به صومه سواء أمنى أو أمذى على ما سبق. In summary, the first is becoming intimate until he discharges. Then his fasting is broken. And if he does that until madhi comes out, then it doesn't. According to the madhab, they said it breaks the fast. But the correct opinion is that it doesn't break the fast. The second is looking now. So what's the summary as it relates to looking? We said that if it's one time and it happens, then it doesn't break the fast. Or madhi comes out, doesn't break the fast. However, if he repeatedly looks and madhi comes out, then it doesn't break the fast. And if he repeatedly looks and mani comes out, it breaks the fast. And so he said the muallif rahimahullah differentiated between al-imdha and al-imna. Ala kulli hal, the Shaykh says, and so what's correct is that there's no difference between madhi coming out, looking once, looking more than once. If madhi does not break the fast in all cases. Al-madhi does not break the fast in all cases. And the final is that thinking about something until that happens, then whether it's madhi or mani, it doesn't break the fast. And we'll continue start with al-hijama next class بإذن الله. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.